Dude, I never thought I'd be in this mess, Carter muttered to himself as he scanned the vile messages on his wife's phone. For a while, he was haunted by the growing suspicion that his wife was cheating on him, but he just couldn't bring himself to face this cruel truth. At first, he thought it was all just his imagination. I mean, their marriage had always seemed solid. 16 years of marriage is not something you can just dismiss. In addition, they had 4 wonderful children, including twin daughters. They got married young. He was 20, and she was only 18. They were full of enthusiasm, aspiring to a dream like everyone else at that age. Before the wedding, Jean even confessed everything, saying, "You know, my love, you are only my second." Such honesty only strengthened his trust in her. He never put her on a pedestal, but he believed with all his heart in their love and mutual trust. For him, their life together seemed like a cozy, simple love story, just like from a good TV show. Carter worked as a sales manager at a major tech firm, managing client presentations and closing big deals. Jean, on the other hand, had a stable job as an accountant at a smaller company. Nothing flashy, but it paid the bills. A few months ago, though, Carter started noticing subtle changes in his wife's behavior. She'd come home looking tired, distracted, glued to her phone, always texting someone. When he'd approach, she'd smile, flirt a bit, and ask, "How was your day? Anything new?" But as soon as he backed off, she'd immediately go back to her phone, fingers flying. "So, who's got you so hooked?" Carter asked casually, trying to keep it light. "Oh, just a friend," Jean responded, her voice overly nonchalant. "We're planning to catch a concert in another city. You cool with that?" "What band?" "You don't know?" Carter raised an eyebrow. Where did such sudden interest come from? And why did you need to go out of town for this? He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. Jean had never been one to change her taste so quickly. "When are you getting back?" he asked, trying to sound more casual than he felt. "We're staying overnight," she said, without missing a beat. Carter stroked his beard, a habit of his when he got anxious. "You've never been interested in this kind of music." "And still not really. It's just a fun trip with the girls. We want to unwind. Can I go?" She pleaded, palms together like she was begging for a favor, her eyes wide and hopeful. "Sure, go ahead, but don't stay out too late." "I don't think I can handle the whole crew by myself," Carter said, forcing a smile. "Thank you, my love." Jean kissed him on the cheek. "I'm just going to take a shower and start packing." Jean disappeared into the bathroom, leaving her phone on the table. Carter was playing with their twin daughters, Amelia and Al, while their boys were over at his parents' place. The phone kept buzzing, vibrating with constant messages that made it dance across the table. He tried to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of him. He'd never invaded her privacy before. It just wasn't something he believed in. But this time, something inside him snapped. For the first time, he couldn't resist. He had to know. After all, he trusted her until now. I opened the screen and there it was, the password staring at me. I couldn't access it, couldn't read what was hidden behind that lock. But my suspicions only intensified. When Jean got out of the shower, he didn't immediately argue with her. I didn't ask why she gets notifications every second or why her phone is blocked at all. Who knows? Maybe she did it so that the children wouldn't accidentally stumble upon something. Perhaps this is also related to work. She is constantly bombarded with messages from work. You need to keep this in mind. Carter spent the night tossing and turning, unable to shake off the creeping thoughts no matter how hard he tried. His mind was a battlefield, with doubts and fears crawling in from every corner. John got home later than she said she would, blaming traffic jams. Excuses, explanations, there's always something. Meanwhile, he was already running late for work. "Close the door behind me, I'm late," he muttered, running out of the apartment. As he left, he couldn't help but notice that Jean was back on her phone, texting someone. She had promised to take a break from electronics, spend time outdoors with the kids, maybe go to the gym and cook something according to old family recipes. But it didn't seem to be going as planned. All day at work, Carter's mind was elsewhere. When he got home, the opportunity presented itself again as Jean locked herself in the bathroom. He knew she would take her time. He had learned all her habits over the years. He tried to remember the year of Dylan's birth. Wrong. Then, Jackson. Still wrong. Then the twins, Amelia and Al. Born in the same year. Bingo. The phone was unlocked. Carter scrolled through her social media accounts, but one contact stood out. Noah. Something about it felt off, and the last letter was marked with an @ symbol. Turns out Noah wasn't the festive kind you celebrate in February, but rather the one that sneaks into someone else's marriage and tears it apart. The most painful thing was reading their messages. Jean poured out her soul to this guy, and one message made his blood boil. Yesterday. I felt amazing with you. I want more and more. At that moment, Carter's emotions defied description. He wanted to pounce on her, destroy everything around her. But thoughts of the children held him back. They needed him no matter what. What followed was an explosive conversation between husband and wife. Jean didn't mince words. I haven't loved you for a long time, Carter. I like you as a person, but I slept with him. He's my colleague, and honestly, I've been wanting a divorce for a while now. I just didn't have the courage to say it. Guess now is as good a time as any. There wasn't a hint of remorse in her voice. How long were you planning to make a fool of me? He asked, barely holding back his anger. I didn't expect it to last this long, she replied, her tone detached. I thought my feelings for him would fade, but... And just like that, the conversation ended. The silence was unbearable, each of them retreating into their own thoughts and separate worlds. The next evening, Carter made up his mind to confront the situation head-on. You know, Jean, I want you to think this over carefully. If you really love this guy and don't want to live with me anymore, let's get a divorce. If not, let's put this dark chapter behind us and try to move on, as if it was just a bad dream. Carter spoke convincingly. Jean quickly agreed. Before this conversation, Carter had tracked down her lover's phone number, suggesting that they meet and settle everything like men. However, the lover did not want to meet in person, agreeing only to a telephone conversation. During this conversation, he admitted that his interest in Jean was purely physical. To make matters worse, the man also had his own family, and his wife was completely unaware of his double life. A week passed, yet the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave Carter. Jean had changed the password on her phone again, but this was no challenge for him. Carter soon cracked it once more and found new messages with Jean's friend Harper, a person he never really liked. What Carter read next floored him. Jean had confided to Harper, I don't love him anymore, Harper, but I realized I don't want to divorce him either. He's become such a great dad, and I feel guilty. If we divorce, I know Carter will break down emotionally. It'll be my fault. And then there's his mother. You know how she is. She'll come down on me hard, and that'll be it. As Carter scrolled further, his hands trembled when he read a particular message. And the twins aren't even his. Time stood still. Not only had he been betrayed, but it turned out that the two little girls he raised weren't even his biological children. And yet, despite the storm of emotions, a strange calm descended on him, as if the worst had already passed. He turned directly to Jean, unable and unwilling to hide his feelings any longer. For the first time, Jean seemed genuinely remorseful. She fell to her knees, sobbing hysterically, begging for forgiveness. She told how she fell in love, lost her mind for a while, and that's when the twins were conceived. Jean said it was a terrible mistake and expressed deep shame for what she had done. Carter, after listening silently, finally responded in a calm voice. I have loved those girls like my own, and nothing changes that. They are my children no matter what. Although he accepted the situation and decided to behave like a responsible father, he issued an ultimatum. We have two choices now. Either we divorce or we work on rebuilding our family. But if we stay together, this ends now, once and for all. I need to be sure of it. Jean swore, even in front of the children, that this time it was really over. For the next year and a half, she seemed to keep her promise. Jean became an attentive, caring, and exemplary wife and mother. She seemed genuinely sorry and compassionate for both Carter and their children. Carter started to believe that, perhaps finally, he had won the battle for his family's happiness. But as fate would have it, Jean resumed her affair with Noah. She had become more skilled at hiding it, but eventually, Carter pieced it together. When he confronted her directly, she had no answer. She simply lowered her eyes in silence. Now Carter faced a much harder question. How could he ever trust a woman who had betrayed him not once but twice? His mind was filled with questions. How do I start trusting my wife again? How do I move past this when it constantly haunts my thoughts? Am I just torturing myself? Jean had changed. She was now the epitome of remorse. She paid more attention to him, noticed his mood swings, and behaved like a personal therapist. She seemed deeply ashamed and disgusted by what she had done. Carter shared these agonizing thoughts with his psychologist, and now faced the toughest choice of his life. Should he continue fighting for their relationship, or was it time to let go for good? Cheating Secrets podcast like me.